Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back to our newest fleet. At long last, the fireworks play nice with each other, and as such, I've made my first group of vehicles. All of these fireworks will never hit each other with the missiles and will never collide, thanks to different flight patterns on each one of them, and a few automated control blocks being very silly and making sure that their flight path constantly changes if they are on a collision course. For instance, these two should hit each other, however, one of them should dip below the other if all is going well. Nope, there we go. As you can see, the one at the back is now higher than the one at the front. Truly magical. But today, we are not focusing on the firework because during the break from the previous episode and this one, there have been some serious changes to the dev build, and that's going to alter our gameplay from here on, and sadly is throwing a spanner in the works in terms of using the Atlas for the future of our cargo needs. But first, I think it's about time our recently accrued defences will be destroyed. We are against a Marauder, an Atlas, a Marauder, and an Atlas. Apparently they like using the same ships over and over again. So let's start this episode with a bit of destruction of our own defences now, shall we? And so begins combat. The coastal defense will defend us valiantly, but ultimately they are going to lose, mostly because the missile system there is completely broken still, with no way to actually repair it since it has no containers, and the gun here just isn't fast enough at firing to actually take out the multitude of enemies. I will say though, this is a pretty poor showing from the Deepwater Guard for their initial attack. I was scared of seeing plunderers or coffin nails, the angry chicken, the flying squirrels, all those sorts of things, but instead they've sent quite possibly the four weakest of their larger vessels, so I'm not going to complain too much. The fireworks should be able to deal with these very, very easily, and I should move out the way. Now, I'm not going to be capturing these, even if I could do, because I think that's a little bit cheap. I've decided I'm going to be capturing very minimally in the future, as it's just not balanced right now in the game. You could easily capture all four of these and win without using any defense or vessel. It may be a little bit silly, but it's the way I've chosen to play. A very slow victory here by the enemy. Although saying that, by the looks of it, most of the ammo reserves are gone now. Yeah. I'll just skip ahead until we get into battle using the fireworks. With the ruins of the coastal defense nearby, it's time for the fireworks to avenge our traitor brethren. Let's see how they do. There we go, one Marauder already suffering from a huge explosion, and here comes the volley from the other two fireworks. Working together, we can accomplish anything. There goes the one Atlas straight into the water, the other Atlas has already sunk as well, and one Marauder is AI dead already, most likely from the cruise missiles which were shot straight away. Which they really shouldn't do. I can't figure out what's going on there. They do have a minimum range, but for some reason when a battle starts, no matter how close they are, they always fire one cruise missile. I can't figure out what's going wrong there. I probably will in the future. Maybe I should add some heat. Ooh, I could perhaps add some repair tentacles to the Firebirds. The Firebirds, I keep calling them this because I do actually have a different flyer called the Firebird. But the fireworks could use repair tentacles, which would be really helpful with each other if there's enough resource nearby, which of course we're going to get into later with the Atlas, and possibly some other options moving forward. Final Atlas. There's a swarm from two of them. Go on, destroy the AI. You know where it is. It's right at the back. Unless this one's different though. Which could be true. I'm not sure which version of the Atlas this is. There's so many variations now. A bit too low for the swarm, that one is. I think it's because it dodged this one though by the looks. Yeah, it's now gaining altitude again. Goodbye, Mr. Atlas, thank you for playing, and thank you, Deepwater Guard, for finally sending us a bit of target practice. The day is won by the 3 fireworks. Excellent, fantastic, and wonderful. Let's get back to our fortress and let's discuss a few of the changes in the recent patch and why we're going to have to take a bit of a different route in terms of our cargo. Home sweet home at the most basic fortress possible. So, like I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by the Deepwater Guard, our plans have changed, and this is because of an update which has recently hit the development build. Since the previous episode and this one, we can no longer use the regular engines. Now, these engines have been around for a long time and have long been considered overpowered. They can be really small, really powerful and really fuel efficient, which, let's face it, does take away a lot of the enjoyment of the game. Making bricks which have layers upon layers of shields is actually a thing you could very easily do using the old engines, but no more. We now have the fuel engines, which honestly are a lot more fun. They are massively customizable, you can check out loads of different stats in the loadout, and if you're a techie nerd like me, you will love this thing. Just look, there's graphs, there's things you can change, there's everything you could possibly want when making your own customized engine. The big problem with this is that the Atlas doesn't take well to the sheer size we need for a fuel efficient engine, and that's the big problem. We're going to actually have to make a new cargo ship, so we're not going to be using the Atlas for this purpose. We will be keeping the Atlas around, and we will have some purpose for it. I'm thinking either a long-range missile launcher, or perhaps a in-combat medic, using repair tentacles and having some form of cargo on board, so that it can at least take a bit of cargo with the fireworks and such for healing and ammo and all sorts of stuff like that. An assistance vessel rather than a cargo vessel. But until then, we have to make do with this. Since in the last clip I was discussing the customizability of the engines without actually explaining anything, I think it's only fair we cover those a little bit right now, and don't worry, this will only take about 2 minutes and we'll get straight back into the campaign. On the left, we have the ultimate of fuel efficiency and being compact. This tiny little engine barely burns through any fuel at all to produce its power. And on the right, we have its polar opposite. Once again, this is very compact, however it is producing a ludicrous amount of power, which is absolutely beautiful indeed. So starting with the left engine, this engine is producing 100 power and is producing 366 power per fuel produced. So essentially, over the course of 1 second, it will make 100 power only using 0.3 units of fuel, which is next to nothing. That is really efficient. The one on the right, however, is producing 600 power, but is doing so at the cost of 1 fuel per 76 power, so it's burning through fuel at a rate of 7.9 units per second. So this thing will drain your reserves in moments if you don't have a ridiculously huge stock of fuel already at your disposal. So making a happy medium is kind of what you need to do, and generally that means larger engines which have the best of both worlds. Now, I don't actually mean engines the same size as the old style of engine, as that actually punishes you now, as you have a startup time. Where are you now? There it is, the mass governs extra power needed to ramp up. Essentially, the bigger the engine, the more power needed to ramp this thing up to its maximum capacity, and thus the bigger engines actually have a lot of negatives about them. Now, I wouldn't say that building tiny engines this small is actually that good either, but it does seem like a little bit bigger than this is the best, perhaps a 5x5 or a 3x3, whereas the huge, humongous engines like the regular type of engine just don't work anymore, which is actually quite nice because it means redundancy is now a thing you can use. Here is where things get a lot more complex, so depending on what you add to the engine will result in the ultimate effect of being either fuel efficient or power efficient, or of course somewhere in between, and the major choice is between the injector and the carburetor, or carburetor depending on which country you're from. The carburetor is ideally the most fuel efficient because you can add the turbochargers and the superchargers, which will not work with the injector. The turbochargers will increase the efficiency when the engine is at a high RPM, essentially when the engine is more stressed out and is being used to its maximum capacity. The fuel usage will go down and become far more efficient. The supercharger does the opposite. When the engine is at a low RPM and is resting or only providing a tiny bit of power, the engine will again be far more efficient per fuel used. The injector can't use either of these and has to rely on the exhaust to actually cool it down. The turbochargers also double as an exhaust, you see, which can provide enough cooling for most engine systems. With the injector not able to use these and already being quite inefficient, the injector will burn through a lot of fuel and result in a lot of power, but ultimately it will burn through more fuel per power produced than the carburetor. But the carburetor will take up a lot more space because it needs all of these additions to it, and if you want, let's say, 600 power, you would need 6 of the things on the left, but only 1 of the things on the right. The things on the left still, of course, using less fuel per second, but taking up a lot more space, and that's where all of the choices start to become evident. How do you build it? How do you make sure all the turbochargers are attached correctly, particularly when you're building bigger engines? How do you balance the two? It's all something I need to practice on personally, as I don't really know myself. So that's pretty much that. That's a really basic overview of the new engine, and honestly, that's coming from someone who's still very naive to the complexities as the engines grow in size and power. And with that, let's go back to the campaign and continue. I've been thinking a little bit, which normally results in some truly terrible things, with this being no exception I'm sure, but I've decided we don't need a cargo vessel just yet. Rather, we need a true assistance vessel, like I was speaking about earlier. So I've decided we're going to be using the Atlas's shell, removing all of the air capabilities, which I've already done, and we're going to be turning it into the ultimate assistance vessel. This vessel will carry with it a lot of healing capabilities, with the addition of a lot of resources being stored in the hull, thus being able to give the flyers and any other ships I build using the new engines, which of course will be far more fuel hungry, fuel, various resources, ammunition, pretty much everything for the fleet it's part of. And this way we can make our designs a little bit more compact, knowing that one of the vessels will be holding all of the resource we need, along with being able to actually help out in the fight. So what I'm going to do is replace a load of this wood with metal, make the inside a little bit more buoyant, and start work on adding some new weapons. We are apparently against a Deepwater Guard Drake column. What's happening? Oh, that's really far away. Can we move these in, though, before we start the fight? Okay, so we're about to get into a fight, though, before we start any of that. They are now attacking us a little bit more often. Well, I'm a little bit surprised, but apparently the Drake column is a single Drake, which didn't last all that long. I must say, I am a little bit underwhelmed by how non-aggressive the Deepwater Guard have actually been against us, especially considering at the moment we are still in ×2 in the growth factor, so they should be sending quite a few attacks. I really do feel like maybe they've lowered the difficulty a little bit for newer players. I mean, a lot of people were saying it was quite difficult, but even so, I would like them to be attacking us a little bit more frequently. Okay, let's get back to retrofitting the Atlas into its newest form. There we are, we now have the very basics done. The deck and the hull itself are now completed, at least to a reasonable level, and with this we can now start working on the weapon systems and the actual cargo hold itself. I've even added a small corn symbol, just so we have the blood god defending our navy, because who else would you like defending you other than the god of blood, death, destruction, and general misfortune? The Deepwater Guard have finally taken note of us and are sending a more respectable group to wipe us out of existence. They have sent multiple Marauders, multiple Atlases, and 2 Casket Bolts. Now, admittedly, that isn't the scariest prospect for someone using flyers, but even so, it's good to see that the Deepwater Guard are finally sending in much higher numbers against us, as that is honestly quite a lot in terms of force points, so hopefully very soon we'll be seeing the Plunderers and the Coffin Nails and the truly scary ships at their disposal. So let's put this to maximum. Maximum block spawned in. We'll go onto one of our ships and we will begin. Ships, thrustercraft, same thing. One of our vehicles of doom! Wow, look at that. When they're all clumped up like that, that does look very impressive. The 2 Casket Bolts, I think they're called, are honestly the scariest thing there. Of course, they are meant to be miniature coffin nails, and they do their job quite well for their limited size. Although saying that, we do have a lot of missiles, and they do seem to be destroying each other pretty darn well. A lot of friendly fire going on there. Oh, a direct hit there from one of the cruise missiles, doing surprisingly little against the Casket Bolt. Never mind, AI is dead after the next shot. Well, it survived 1 cruise missile, so at least it can be proud of that. There goes the other Casket Bolt. Both of them are now going down, and with that, it's pretty much certain we are going to be the victor here. So let's just speed up time and watch the victory. Another glorious victory for the fireworks. So during that battle, I was actually monitoring the bars there on the side, which essentially allowed me to see how much resource was being used by each of the vehicles. And I will say, this time round, they used up a lot less metal due to the increase of ammo barrels, and honestly, they didn't use up any fuel, mostly because they're still using the old engines. So right now, these are very, very efficient in a battle, and we're losing almost no resource by using them. The attacks from the Deepwater Guard are becoming more and more frequent. Not 5 minutes after that last onslaught, they have sent 2 more Drakes to their death. I'm not going to complain because we're pretty much getting free resource at this point, but it is at least a good sign that the difficulty is starting to finally ramp up. here we are. We have added the weakest of the weapons that will be going onto this vessel, onto the converted Atlas. And essentially all it is a flak cannon which we've took from the capital ship, scaled it down slightly and gave it slightly bigger ammo. The shots are of course flak shells which will explode even if they don't hit the enemy, as they have a timed fuse which is controlled by the turret. If the shell goes too far without hitting a target, it will self-detonate, hopefully hitting an enemy which it came close to hitting but sadly missed. And with that, I'm afraid I am all out of time for today's episode. Off camera, I'm going to build up the bridge so it doesn't look so pronounced, going to try and sleek it down, add some mass to the back here, add some mass to the middle so it all looks a little bit more natural, and we're going to be adding the alternate weapons, which should be a missile weapon, anti-missile missiles, and perhaps another advanced cannon, but this time a little bit chunkier with a faster fire rate, which will be the main weapon. This is more of an assistance weapon, aimed to only take out the light and fast enemies. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed today's episode, then of course, likes, favourite, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. I promise this ship is going to look significantly better by the time the next episode comes around. Thank you again for watching, and goodbye.